For more debates, updates, and bonus clips, sign up at thebigconversation.show. It sounds a bit like what Keith's describing there, I could be wrong, is something along the lines of the hard problem of consciousness.
It is.
Dan, do you want to explain what that is and what your response to it is, why you don't think it's a problem?
The philosopher David Chalmers dubbed something the hard problem, capital H, capital P. And it's just the problem that Keith outlined. That is, what is there in addition to the adroitness of the ant, which for David doesn't settle anything? Is it conscious? And how do we tell the difference between a zombie, which is just as animated as Keith there, but for all we know isn't conscious? And I think this is a subtle trick, sort of like a magician's trick, which gets our imaginations off on the wrong foot. I don't think there is a hard problem. It's just Chalmers' baptism of this hard problem, which has got people convinced there's a hard problem. When he first introduced it, I said, this is just vitalism reborn. After all, there's the hard problem of whether something's alive. How do we know the ant's alive? You say, well, look at it. Well, that doesn't prove it. It might just be a robot. I mean, maybe it's a zombie ant, or maybe it's not even alive. Now, physicists, biologists, they don't argue about this. The line between living and not living is not an interesting theoretical line. We've learned, well, are proteins alive? Are motor proteins alive, or are they just little robots? Cells are alive. Yeah. How about viruses? Don't ask. We understand that the complexity gradually creates things which are manifestly alive. Amoebas are alive.
And we don't have to create a strict cutoff at which pinpoint life.
And there's no élan vital. There's no extra substance that you have to put in there that distinguishes the living from the unliving, as many people thought. Those were the vitalists. And I think that Chalmers and Keith here on his own expression, they're remaking the vitalist mistake, and now they simply moved up a notch and they say there's an extra soupçon of something, which is consciousness, which has nothing, and Chalmers is very clear about this, has nothing to do with all the things that I study about consciousness. It has nothing to do with the ability to answer questions or to have your memory adjusted or to change your beliefs or become, get converted religiously. All of those things, those are the easy problems of consciousness. The only problem that's left over is whether you're conscious. And in that sense, it looks exactly like vitalism. And when I put it to David that that's what it is, he said, no, it isn't. The problems are entirely different. And
well, we don't have David here, but we do have Keith. So Keith, what do you make of the way that Dan has laid out the hard problem of consciousness there, and for you?
Right. Well, I don't think vitalism is a problem of any sort. I mean, because as far as I can see, to describe a thing as living is to talk about its reproductive capacities and its behavioral capacities, and that's okay. And I think you can have a very shady boundary in deciding whether you call a bacterium alive or not. But consciousness is not like that. It's not a decision about whether to call something conscious or not. It's a real fact. You want to know, do ants have feelings? And a feeling is something that I know. I have feelings. I started life as a musician, so to me music is very important. And music is consciously perceived. I mean, if it wasn't consciously perceived, I wouldn't be interested in it, right? So whatever is going on in my brain to produce me enjoying music, that doesn't explain my enjoyment of the music. That's an inner experience that nobody else can share. And how I think of Wagner's Ring is totally different from the way that some other people think of it. But it's the same experience, the same things are happening, the same electrochemical wavelengths are going along, and that same neurons are firing, perhaps.
And is it the case that, in your view, the fact that you could look at a person's brain when they're listening to Wagner and say, oh, I can see neurons firing and brain chemistry going on, but that cannot be equated with the same thing as the experience of hearing music.
Exactly. It can't. It's not an identity. There's no identity between finding blood flow in the brain or electrical activity in the brain and whatever it is that they're enjoying when they enjoy a piece of music.
In that sense, it's a qualitative difference.
It's a qualitative difference, and also one which is, it's not like vitalism, because it's not, in vitalism, there's nothing extra which makes something alive. You describe it by describing the biological facts. But I do think that with consciousness there is something extra, and there could be a zombie. I mean, there could be a person just like me, but wasn't conscious.